There was one particular question kind of looming over the entire ordeal, just sort of stuck in the crosshairs here. And with multiple contenders, the options were kind of limited to way two different crowds and just an overall hierarchy that wouldn't be able to deal with what had been brought forward. So at some point, you just have to ask yourself, at the end of the day, this is how we wound up here. One solution we took a serious look at was just that. It was never properly addressed, but the theme for the evening definitely drew on some keynote characteristics. The thing is, there's always going to be room because it's expanding so rapidly. 22 points last week, so whatever the affiliation, you can bet they're going to put in the work. I don't think there's going to be any reluctance or resistance at all. From what I can tell, in fact, after it was revealed in last week's session, it's gaining quite a bit of support from across the board. We can attribute that to the additional files as well as the overall positive celebrity reaction. It came as no surprise who was genuinely for or against it, mainly based on the past. We received some suggestions regarding the affordability and clarity of future actions, so I definitely want to touch on those. For just the average everyday item and service, we found that going forward, there would be much better activity on the far ends of the spectrum. They actually achieved tangible results, which were tantamount in about half of the actual goal, which is still very impressive. So, continuing on, a lot of the various types proved to be very advantageous, especially the data from the first two trials. There was some speculation about what factors would come into play, but overall it was dismissed. Officials confirmed it as well as professionals in that field, so I'd say it was a fairly safe bet. Speaking of which, on the daily report, we received some very interesting tidbits, which we hope leads to an arrest or at least a substantial criticism of the philosophical turn. The financial district didn't have a whole lot of feedback, which I think speaks for itself. This is the only occurrence we know of and the fairest judgment with the least speculation. From what we know so far, it's been kind of a touchy subject, particularly for those that kind of missed out on the events that came immediately before it. So, of course, we give a congratulatory measure and hope that all the people involved get some assistance at some point in the near future. In the meantime, as long as the figures remain stable, I think we'll be able to come out on top. The rest has been very forthcoming the rest has been very forthcoming in vertical upbringings, and even though it has been since disproven, it remains a popular theory. So some colleagues who have taken time to familiarize themselves have spoken very highly. Regardless of regardless of what side you fall closer to, it's nice to know the common spaces there. You may see the full potential of the compromise, but it took a lot of skill to bring it up so soon afterwards. In fact, we're pretty lucky that the provided materials were even sent up. Some would even describe it as a triumph. Of course, they also aren't responsible and won't be held to the same standards. So, with the same cordial, forward manner, the overarching theme will remain the same. But that does open us up a bit as we decide which provisions will remain relevant and which will fade into obscurity. last year, the competitor's subsidiary tried something along the same lines with less resources but more personal direction. They were able to sneak into a top market spot. So that fortitude is definitely to be admired, even ignoring the tragedy or the blandness of some of their later endeavors. It's still very likely that it will be that it's still very likely that we'll just be able to do a complete 180 on this, but we won't know until it is fully implemented.